Hi, we are Group 3 consisting of Levi Fingerman, Rhiannon Bragg, Philip Watts, and Shona Bickham, and we are presenting Cloud Migration. First off, what is cloud migration? Cloud migration is the process of transitioning all or part of a company's data, applications, and services from on-site premises behind our firewall to the cloud, where it can be provided over the internet. Which begs the question, what is the cloud? The cloud refers to a public or semi-public space on transmission lines that exist between the endpoints of a transmission. Data emerges from the cloud in the same format as when it entered, and once data enters the cloud, it shares space with other data transmissions. There are a multitude of threats concerning the implementation of cloud migration. However, there are 9 top threats for cloud migration. The 2 most common threats are data breaches and data loss. A data breach occurs when sensitive internal data falls into competitors' hands. If a cloud database is not designed properly, a flaw in one client's application could cause a data breach and allow an attacker to access all client data. Data loss occurs when data is permanently lost. Data stored in the cloud can be permanently lost due to malicious attackers, but then it can also be lost due to accidental deletion by the cloud service provider or due to a physical catastrophe such as a fire or an earthquake. A third common threat is account service traffic hijacking, such as phishing. If an attacker gains access to your credentials to the cloud using account service traffic hijacking, they can eavesdrop on your activities, manipulate data, return falsified information, and redirect clients to illegitimate sites. A fourth common threat is insecure interfaces and APIs. Cloud providers can expose a set of weak software interfaces or APIs that customers use to manage and interact with cloud services to security issues, thus exposing clients to increased risk. Another common threat is denial of service attacks. Denial of service attacks prevent users of cloud services from being able to access their data or applications. This denial of access can cause service providers to lose customers, and they also happen to generate a great deal of media attention. Malicious insiders are the 6th greatest threat. Malicious insiders are a considerable threat as they can have access to extremely sensitive information. An additional threat is the abuse of cloud services, as an attacker using an array of cloud servers might be able to crack an encryption key in minutes that prior to having access to cloud servers would have taken the attacker years to crack using his limited hardware. Also equally important is the threat of insufficient due diligence, as many companies jump into the cloud without understanding the full scope of the undertaking, thus consequently taking on unknown levels of risk in ways that they may not even comprehend. Lastly, shared technology vulnerabilities is a threat because a compromise of an integral piece of shared technology, such as a shared platform component, exposes the entire cloud to a potential compromise and breach. Now that we know the cloud's common threats, let's talk about the cloud's major functionalities. One major functionality of the cloud is that the cloud allows information to be provided over the internet on an on-demand basis, which allows for easy access. Another major functionality is that the cloud enables a company to potentially reduce capital expenditures and operating costs. In today's current environment, cost savings are an important aspect of business. Lastly, the cloud also enables a company to benefit from the advantage of dynamic scaling, high availability, multi-tenancy, and effective resource allocation.
Organizations can suffer damage even when they prove a data breach was not caused by a fault of their own, but as a result of malicious activity. Hacking and website attacks remain a greater source of breaches than either accidental loss or insider breaches. The public, stakeholders, and investors are unlikely to sympathize when a breach occurs. Breach notification is very costly to businesses. They face the cost of notifying data subjects and investigating and controlling the breach. Many face potential litigation and fines, and then there are the intangible costs associated with damage to the corporate brand, loss of customers, decline in share value, and reputation management. Mike Skidmore, the privacy and security officer of Shredit, stated, "We have seen an increase in small businesses without security protocols in place, and a crucial first step for practicing effective information security is improving awareness of policies and procedures." Organizations face a lot of risks, but enforcing sensitive data safeguarding as a company-wide practice will potentially avert both significant financial and reputational damage. It is crucial that businesses take proactive steps to protect against breaches. The 2013 Security Tracker found that about 12% of C-suite or highest level executives reported financial losses of more than $500,000 due to breaches this year than in previous years. Yet 23% of the C-suite executives surveyed do not believe a breach will impact their business. In today's global business climate, businesses are operating in increasingly expansive supply chains, outsourcing services to various vendors, and sharing sensitive information to facilitate business transactions. As touch points in the supply chain increase, so does risk. Businesses need to hold each other to a higher security standard. All it takes is one breach for many reputations to be damaged. Businesses are also struggling to implement the proper policies and controls required to prepare for and mitigate the legal, regulatory, and financial risks associated with a security failure, both before and after a breach occurs. Almost half of breach incidents were attributed to lost or stolen equipment such as laptops, PDAs, and memory sticks. The second largest threat came from negligent employees, temporary employees, and/or contractors. Breaches and losses result in abnormal churn or abnormal turnover, which can be broken down to cost per victim. Data loss is also detrimental to businesses because it typically results in a loss of services for the customer or an otherwise very inconvenient experience. This leads to reputation damage and loss of services from customers, which in turn cause the company to lose more money. If an attacker gains access to your credentials, they can eavesdrop on your activities and transactions, manipulate data, return falsified information, and redirect your clients to illegitimate sites. Your account or service instances may be a new base for the attacker. From here, they may leverage the power of your reputation to launch subsequent attacks. Account and service hijacking, usually with stolen credentials, remain a top threat. With stolen credentials, attackers can often access critical areas of deployed cloud computing services, allowing them to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of those services. Organizations should be aware of these techniques as well as common defense in-depth protection strategies to contain the damage and possible litigation resulting from a breach. While providers strive to ensure security is well integrated into their service models, it is critical for consumers of those services to understand the security implications associated with the usage, management, orchestration, and monitoring of cloud services. Reliance on a weak set of interfaces and APIs exposes organizations to a variety of issues related to confidentiality, integrity, availability, and accountability. The overall impact of a DOS denial of service attack is a function of the time it takes to detect the attack, the time needed to mitigate it, and the extent of service degradation both before and after mitigation. For many international data corporation operators, detection consists of waiting for customers to complain, and mitigation consists of dropping all traffic destined to the resource under attack. This form of mitigation may protect the IDC infrastructure and other customers, but it completes the attack on a particular target of the DOS event. If the target is a high-value customer, the hosting provider will likely suffer financial loss. Findings show that malicious or criminal attacks are the most costly breach incidents in the 9 countries studied by Ponemon Institute. U.S. companies realize the greatest increase in breach costs are caused by a third-party error or quick notification of breach victims, regulators, and other stakeholders. UK companies had the greatest increase in the cost of data breach if the incident involved a lost or stolen device. Criminals continue to leverage new technologies to improve their reach, avoid detection, and improve the effectiveness of their activities. Cloud computing providers are actively being targeted partially because their weak registration systems facilitate anonymity and providers' fraud detection capabilities are limited. IaaS, infrastructure as a service providers, offer their customers the illusion of unlimited compute, network, and storage capacity, often coupled with the frictionless registration process where anyone with a valid credit card can register and immediately begin using cloud services. Some providers even offer a free limited trial period. By abusing the anonymity behind these registration and usage models, spammers, malicious code authors, and other criminals have been able to conduct their activities with relative impunity. Cloud computing providers expose a set of software interfaces, or APIs, that customers use to manage and interact with cloud services. Provisioning, management, orchestration, and monitoring are all performed using these interfaces. The security and availability of cloud services is dependent upon the security of these basic APIs. From authentication and access control to encryption and activity monitoring, these interfaces must be designed to protect against both accidental and malicious attempts to circumvent policy. Investors are skeptical of doing business with companies and municipalities that are known for corruption. Whether a business is seeking investment to grow their firm or sell investments for a living, a business will have a much harder time finding willing investors when bribes or in-kind favors are required, or a business has a history of corruption within its ranks. Competition is unfairly affected when investors' risk is multiplied by changing business climates that follow corrupt business practices. Due diligence is defeated when the facts change according to the current levels of corruption. Practical investors steer clear of businesses with corrupt histories. IaaS vendors deliver their services in a scalable way by sharing infrastructure. Often the underlying components that make up this infrastructure, e.g. CPU caches, GPUs, etc., were not designed to offer strong isolation properties for a multi-tenant architecture. To address this gap, a virtualization hypervisor, or virtual machine monitor, mediates access between guest operating systems and the physical compute resources. Still, hypervisors have exhibited flaws that have enabled guest operating systems to gain inappropriate levels of control or influence on the underlying platform. A defense-in-depth strategy is required and should include compute storage and network security enforcement and monitoring. Strong compartmentalization should be employed to ensure that individual customers do not impact the operations of other tenants running on the same cloud provider. Customers should not have access to any other tenant's actual or residual data, network traffic, etc. Attacks have surfaced in recent years that target the shared technology inside cloud computing environments. Disk partitions, CPU caches, GPUs, and other shared elements were never designed for strong compartmentalization. As a result, attackers focus on how to impact the operations of other cloud customers and how to gain authorized access to data.
The magnitude of the threats to businesses that are migrating to the cloud can be judged from the list of services they are moving to the cloud. In short, the available services in the cloud are almost limitless. Businesses are moving parts of their IT needs to the clouds, and in some cases moving virtually all their needed services to the cloud. As PCMag.com wrote in December 2012, it's not a stretch to say that aside from a locally installed desktop operating system and browser, or increasingly from a single mobile device, a lot of today's small business technology needs can be fulfilled almost completely with cloud-based offerings. There are several incentives for businesses moving to the cloud, including not having to deploy physical infrastructure like file and email servers, storage systems, or software, anywhere, anytime availability of cloud services, access to sophisticated technology without the need of an IT consultant or tech worker on the payroll, and access to reliable and secure systems. There are three main categories of cloud services: software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Software as a service operates as a specific application or service offered to a customer as a subscription. It is by far the broadest cloud services category. Platform as a service allows businesses a platform on which they can create and deploy custom apps, databases, and business services integrated into one platform. With infrastructure as a service, businesses can purchase infrastructure such as servers, memory, firewalls, and more from providers as virtual resources. In October of 2012, an article in SearchCloudProvider.com listed the top cloud services enterprises and small to medium-sized businesses want to buy. The top 9, starting with number 9, are Database as a Service, 8. Business Intelligence and Data Management Services, 7. Social Collaboration Software, 6. Disaster Recovery, also known as DR as a Service, 5. Platform as a Service, 4. Infrastructure as a Service, 3. Testing and Development, 2. Storage as a Service, and the number 1 category is not surprisingly Software as a Service. Some popular types of software as a service are accounting, billing, general productivity, project management, tools that monitor social media, marketing management, hosted business email, hosted PBX, support help desk, and online conferencing. Some cloud providers of software as a service are Intuit with Quicken, QuickBooks, and TurboTax, Dropbox, Salesforce.com, FreshBooks, Bill.com, Microsoft Office 365, Speak.com, and Gmail. Some cloud providers of Platform as a Service are Windows Azure and Google App Engine. Some cloud providers of Infrastructure as a Service are Amazon EC2, Rackspace, and Google Compute Engine. Now, the bad news. The threats from cloud migration are real and occasionally have been realized. Some real-world examples include several outages at Salesforce.com, Amazon's EC2, and a 2-day outage at Intuit in 2010. In 2009, customers of Coghead were given no warning before the Platform as a Service company discontinued operations. A 3-hour Gmail outage in 2009 affected approximately 113 million users. These are unfortunate reminders of why businesses must treat migration to the cloud with great care.
Let's refer back to the previous slide listing the 9 threats to cloud computing. These are ranked in order of severity. We will discuss each of these threats and their remediation. The Cloud Security Alliance recognizes data breaches as the #1 cloud security threat. To mitigate this threat, you need to improve provisions in cloud contracts, address data breach questions, be confident that your cloud vendor has your back. So if your cloud vendor isn't prepared to help you in promptly assessing the nature, scope, and extent of a breach, then your life is likely to be much less pleasant for a long while. Remediation for data loss is implement strong API access control, encrypt and protect integrity of data in transit, analyze data protection at both design and runtime, implement strong key generation, storage and management, and destruction practices, demand providers wipe persistent media before it is released into the pool, and specify provider backup and retention strategies. Some proactive steps companies can take to prevent this threat are prohibit the sharing of account credentials, leverage strong two-factor authentication techniques where possible, employ proactive monitoring to detect unauthorized activity, and understand cloud provider security policies and SLAs. An API is an application programming interface, which is a set of routines, protocols, and tools for building software applications. Remediation is analyze the security model of cloud provider interfaces, ensure that strong authentication and access controls are implemented in concert with encrypted transmission, and understand the dependency chain associated with the API. Denial of service attacks are among the most feared threats in today's cybersecurity landscape. They are difficult to defend against and potentially costly. Any deliberate effort to cut off your website or network from its intended users qualifies as a DOS attack. An effective defense against this HTTP flood can be the deployment of a reverse proxy. The impact that malicious insiders can have on an organization is considerable, given their level of access and ability to infiltrate organizations and assets. So we should enforce strict supply chain management, specify human resource requirements as part of legal contracts, require transparency into overall information security and management practices, and determine security breach notification processes. Cloud computing providers are actively being targeted, partially because their weak registration systems enable anonymity. Also, the provider's fraud detection capabilities are limited, so they should have stricter initial registration and validation processes, enhanced credit card fraud monitoring and coordination, comprehensive introspection of customer network traffic, and monitoring public blacklists for one's own network blocks. The bottom line for enterprises moving to a cloud technology model is that they must have capable resources and perform extensive internal and CSP due diligence to understand the risks it assumes by adopting this new technology model. Since attackers focus on how to impact the operation of other cloud customers and how to gain unauthorized access to data, we should implement security best practices for installation, monitor environment for unauthorized changes, promote strong authentication and access control, enforce service level agreements for patching and vulnerability remediation, and conduct vulnerability scanning and configuration audits. Security controls in cloud computing are, for the most part, no different than security controls in any IT environment. Though there are a number of issues for companies to bear in mind, and cloud computing may not be ideal for every business, it can be an extremely cost effective and beneficial way for large and small companies to store data and access software. So it's well worth considering in more depth. Because of the scalability of cloud computing, it's easy for firms to start small and try certain applications out to see how it works for them and their business before gradually expanding their use.